So what I wrote here, and for me this is the biggest thing, it's that there's a lot of things we do as people, as individuals, as leaders, every single day, big, giant things. But often, the things that matter most in your life, professional, personal, doesn't matter, your life, are actually tiny things. Tiny things where people have made a difference in your life, or you have made a difference in someone's life, that are the most memorable. There's a lot of conversation about whether mentoring works, doesn't work. You can have your own opinion. But mentoring is most effective when you create a connection on one topic, on one insight, that actually changes the way you think about things and allows you to think about your own life, your own choices, in a way that's really positive. I proudly say I was raised by a den of lionesses. What does this mean? So I didn't come from a professional family, so my family owned kiranas around New York City. So there's no hierarchy of men and women in this particular scenario. Everyone works, right? So the answer is the store needs to be open. Congratulations, you look awake, and come in here, you get to work. I was the oldest daughter, so that means I ran the till because I was the only person responsible enough to make change for money. That was my job. I had another sister who did stock, another sister who did inventory, another sister who helped cook, all the jobs inside this little kirana. And for the most part, my life was entirely dominated by women. So my mom only has sisters. I only have sisters. So in any given point, there was probably 15 women and maybe 2 guys. And it didn't occur to me. I'm very blessed, so we didn't have a lot of money, but it never occurred to me that there was something I couldn't do. No one told me any better. And I just assumed, of course, I could. And how I make decisions is basically, am I excited and passionate about something? Do I want to wake up in the morning and do it? And is it just a little scary? And if it's just a little scary, I go for it. Then it's the best idea I've ever had. You know, would I understand? Would I be able to understand the Indian culture? Would I be able to relate? And as an observer of people, I've worked all around the world. I can tell you in some ways, India is much like the rest of the world. In other ways, it's completely special and different. But at the end of the day, people are the same. They want to be respected. They want to be heard. They want to be able to contribute. They want to be able to make a difference. And those universal truths are the same for men, women, junior people, more older people. It actually doesn't matter. It's our perspective. So the reason why I say this is we think about things in our own perspective. Now, I'm going to tell you one other story of my little Parker, my darling 10-year-old. And it's about Parker gets a chance to meet the United Nations in India. And as a parent, this is an extremely exciting and slightly terrifying thing. So we meet the ambassador, we meet the person who runs the United Nations Development Program, and we're listening to the programs. Coke spends a lot of time with the UN to try to think about what we can do to improve India and the lives of Indians. And they're going through all the different programs. And as she's reading them out, she asks my son, which one of these resonates the most with you? And there's all different programs on the list. And he says, well, Mommy talks a lot about water. Mommy talks a lot about waste and plastic. But the thing that I'd like to talk about, my 10-year-old son, I'd like to talk about gender inequality. Okay. Now, I'm slightly terrified because I don't know exactly what he's going to say. So she goes, great, gender inequality. He goes, yes, the men in my family have no rights. Not one right. And in fact, let me tell you how bad it is. What do you mean how bad it is? We have a voting system in my house. This is true, actually. We have a voting system. Each of my children get 1 vote. 1 vote. My husband gets 5 votes. I get 10 votes. And he's explaining this to the ambassador of India. And he's going, let me tell you, I think we've gone too far. Okay, so my husband's quite happy for me to have 10 votes, I'll be honest with you, because then I get blamed for all of the terrible decisions that happen in life, or all the great decisions, depending on your perspective. I think the point is, we have to be careful. And as always, we learn from our children, we learn from our elders, that inclusion is really important, but it's not necessarily about making sure that you're only talking about diversity. And we need to be really careful that we're creating the right culture, an inclusive culture where everyone wins. And we spend a lot of time talking about what this looks like. So this is a little statistics, but the important thing is, when we were looking at inclusion, we realized we were only hiring people from the same top schools. We were only hiring people from the same wealthy cities. We were only hiring people who had similar economic backgrounds and privileges. And we had a much bigger diversity and inclusion problem than we realized, because we thought it was just about the obvious stuff about gender. And what we realized, it wasn't. It was much deeper. And it was a cultural belief that if you managed to study when you're a child better than anybody else, you're entitled to more career opportunities as an adult. And I don't know if that's fair, because sometimes some of our childhood is difficult, and sometimes we don't have the advantage or the opportunity of some people to be able to sit home and study. I've worked since I'm 3 years old. Now, I'm not complaining to a labor lawyer. The reality is that everyone helped, and that wasn't a terrible thing, but I had time to do my homework, and that wasn't enough, right? Then it was you had to go in and help the family. So how we think about this becomes increasingly important. So making sure that we give people opportunities in a different way. I'm going to give you the example, one of my favorite examples, and some of the great Coke associates here will have a laugh about how I feel about Women's Day. Women's Day is something that particularly bothers me. So when I moved to India, we had a very, very long-standing, beautiful tradition that all of the women in our organization received flowers. And it was one of the first changes I made when I got here. And a lot of the women employees and men employees got really upset with me. Like, what are you doing? I need my recognition. I need my flower. Today is my day. You know, to switch to every day is your day, actually. And what women need is education. And if you want something for Women's Day, I'll give you training instead of flowers. And the first year we did training, and the feedback was really, really positive. But this year for Women's Day, for me, it just wasn't enough. Okay, so my people actually, if you work at Hindustan Coca-Cola, you're a pretty privileged person. You have a good profession, and we have an issue, all of us, in not enough women in the workforce in India, and there's some barriers to get them to come into the workforce in India. So I have this random thought, and like all CEOs, sometimes I fall in love with my own ideas. I'm not sure if any of you do that, but I have that terrible habit of sometimes thinking I'm clever. And I came up with this idea that my people were trained. They can get training whenever they like. I'm happy to train them all day, every day. The better thing for me to do is to go out into the community and teach local people who are not employees and help them write CVs. And we started advertising near all of our facilities and all of our factories and our headquarters, and said we're going to bring people in off the streets, and we are each going to sit with one of them in vernacular and in English and write them a CV so that they can get a job. And my brilliant team looked at me like I was crazy. What? How are we going to be able to do this? Why are we doing this? Let's go back to what we're comfortable with. But in order for us to make a difference in India, we have to be disruptive. We have to provoke. And we have to go to the very beginning of the barriers. So if there's a barrier that says a woman doesn't know, there aren't enough women in the workforce, then let's put them in it. How do we give them the courage and belief to have a conversation. So we welcomed almost 500 women from around India and brought them in, talked to them about personal financial management, helped them write a CV, gave them a Coke, and sent them off. Some of them have come back to work at Coke. Some of them have written to me to say they had jobs other places. And next year I'm sitting going, how do I get that 500 people to be 5,000? How do we make a tangible difference to real world problems? Part of it all starts with first. So unfortunately, you can't see the names or some of the faces of some of the people here. A lot of these lovely women are actually in the room. And we have had a series of fantastic firsts. Jobs that we did not think could be done by women. All of those women are real. They are here. They are living proof every single day that these jobs can be done. Where we found it specifically relevant is that we had a lot of experience at Coke, at many other companies, of women in what we would consider corporate or functional roles. So lots of HR, lots of finance, lots of legal, marketing, all of jobs that were historically perceived to be okay for women. And what we've specifically targeted are things that we're told that maybe a woman can't do, right? So we started in some of these places. So we have our first chief digital officer, we have our first woman head of sales, our first woman head of distribution, and then we started getting even bolder. We have our first woman line operator, our first woman filler, our first woman quality assurance manager, our first woman, so there's one technology we use called Blowmax, and we have the first woman Blowmax operator in the world. We have a forklift driver. We have whatever you think we needed to have. Now, those people are not unicorns. They're real, and they live in our organization, and they're successful every day. So I just want to pause for a second for me to thank and salute these people who are so proud to work as pioneers every day. Truly inspiring stuff. But the question is it enough? Right? So I'm just going to build this slide because I can't read sideways. I think there's a part that I want to talk about around one isn't enough. Okay, so it's great that there's one person who can do things. It's great that we operate as a culture of inspired people. It's great that we try to make a difference every day. However, even though it's amazing to be the first at something, it's even better to have friends. It's even better to be part of a family, to be part of a community. And sometimes it comes in unlikely places. So I'll give you an example. One of our first female operatives, so our newest factory is about 45% women today. But we have, and some of that great team is here. Some of our older factories, the numbers are much smaller. And one of our factories, we had one woman operator in our factory. So I go to visit her and say, hey, how's everything going? And of course, all the men are standing there in a big circle to stare at her while she answers me. So I chase all of them away. Sit down. How's it going? Well, ma'am, now you're here. All the washrooms are cleaner. That's good, because I go in, stop at every single washroom, so hygiene's better. Good. Well, ma'am, now you're here. They invite me to a lot of capability classes. I feel like I'm learning something. Okay, great. Do you feel safe? Yeah, I feel safe, and now there's cameras everywhere, and I know that I'm safe. Great. Any other concerns? No, I'm good, and now if I work too late, there's a taxi, and all of these things are there. Great. But you don't seem happy. Well, ma'am, I'm not happy. Okay, well, why aren't you happy? What's going on? Well, you see, I have to go have lunch. Okay, do you not like the lunch? Do you not feel safe at lunch? No, I like lunch. Food is fine. All these guys are very nice to me, but I kind of eat by myself. Well, why do you eat by yourself? And she goes, well, because I really just want to complain about my mother-in-law. honestly. And at lunch, I want to come in, I want to have my dal and my rice, and I want to complain about my mother-in-law, and I'm the only woman, and who am I going to complain to? Okay, fair. So I look over, and there's a table of men having lunch, and we walk over, and I'm like, hey, guys, can we sit with you? Yes, of course, ma'am. How many people your mother-in-law drives you crazy? Every one of them. I said, great, we have friends. Come. All of you crib all day. And now she's completely happy. We've hired 4 more people, but she sits with the men to complain about all of their mother-in-laws, and this is their favorite topic at lunch, because sometimes we're more the same than we realize. Sometimes, if we just open up, if we just talk, if we just share, if we're just vulnerable, we realize that actually so much of who we are and so much of what we do is the same. So I'll close on belief and trust. And belief and trust is a really important thing for me. And it's about making sure the walk matches the talk. Doing what we say we're going to do every single day and making sure that that's visible. Because India is the smallest, most giant country I've ever been in. Everybody shares everything, right? There's no secrets in India. Everyone knows everybody. And if you're not authentic to who you are, it comes across. So I can say all day, every day, I believe that we're a family at Coca-Cola. But because I do things like, and I will tease about what time I leave the office. So I leave the office when I'm in the physical office at 3:30. The reason why I leave at 3:30 is because I pick up my children from school. And I sit with them and do their homework. Because I've decided that's what's important. That doesn't mean I can't be chairman and CEO. It doesn't mean I miss deadlines. It means we all make choices every single day, and we have to role model those choices. So one of my proud moments, so Coca-Cola cares a lot about the environment. I personally care a lot about the environment. The booth talks about water and plastic this year, specifically for Mumbai, but one of my personal passions is trees. Love trees. I think everyone should plant a tree every day if you can. I think it only does a wonderful thing. And we have a tradition at Coca-Cola all around the world where when senior leaders visit a factory, we do a plantation. So we plant a tree, we put a plaque because you're important, and then we come and water your tree. And we've started a new tradition, or the factory has started a new tradition for me, and now the trees don't just say my name, it says the Christina Ruggiero family tree. And those trees come, and then my kids come with me to the factories, and we water their tree. So they're part of the fabric of Coca-Cola every single day, which is a really important thing for me about how we visibly demonstrate cultural change. So I'll leave to say that Coca-Cola is all about optimism and inclusion. So as a drink, Coca-Cola is a drink for everyone. As an employer, Coca-Cola is an employer for everyone. And it is my deepest privilege and blessing to spend the day with you and to share some of that optimism with you. So thank you for your time.